bodice, culture, fashion, and craft.
Hi guys, you're welcome back to my channel. If you are seeing me for the first time, my name is Oti. I create content on sewing tutorials and turban cap. You're welcome to my channel, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. In today's tutorial, I'll be showing us on how to make a bubu dress that you saw on my thumbnail. It is very easy to make. I'll be making use of this cord lace. The length is 46 inches, but the length of the dress is 65 inches. I'm going to show us how I'm going to cut extra fabric and attach to the lower part to make it up to the length of 65 inches that I'm working with. I've already drafted my basic measurement. I fold my fabric into two with my biggest measurement, which is my hip. My hip is 51 inches divided by 4 is 12.75, and an added extra 2 inches seam allowance. So on fold, I folded my fabric with my hip measurement plus 2 inches. Like I said, I've imputed my basic measurement, but I'm just going to quickly walk us through on what I've drafted. My shoulder to my half length is 17 inches. At my half length, I imputed my waist measurement divided by 4 plus 2 inches. Shoulder to my hip line is 25 inches. At my hip line, I imputed my hip measurement divided by 4 plus 2 inches. I connect the same measurements from my hip line straight to the lower part of the dress. For the armhole, I drafted for the front armhole and the back armhole. If you don't know how to draft your basic measurement, I've already done a detailed tutorial for beginners on how to draft a basic measurement. I'm going to put the link in the description box below, so do check it out. So let's move on to the neckline, which is the beauty of the dress that I'm making. Shoulder measurement is 9 inches, including half an inch seam allowance to join with the sleeve. 9 inches. Neck width that I'll be working with is 3.5 inches. Neck depth for the back, I'll be working with 1 inch. Neck depth for the front, I'll be working with 3.5 inches. So I'll connect the neckline. This is for the back, and this is for the front. At the shoulder, I'm going to measure 1 inch. Then from the 1 inch, I'll connect it to the neckline for my shoulder slope. I'm going to add seam allowance to the shoulder slope, half an inch, to join the front and the back together. Half an inch, half an inch. Then I'll connect together. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to cut it out. I'm going to first of all cut my fabric straight down. I'll fold another one. I'll place this front on another folded fabric. Then I'll cut out the back neckline first. I'll cut out the shoulder slope, the back armhole, and the bodies. Then we'll continue with the front. From these 3.5 inches that I came down with for the front, I'm going to measure 4 inches further. These 3 inches, I'm going to measure 1/4 inch, just quarter is okay. Then I'll slant it to meet these 4 inches. So I'm going to cut it out. Just pinch it a little, just a little, just a little. Then I'm going to cut it like so. Let me show us how the front looks like. This is how the front looks like. If you want this slit to be longer, you can increase it to 5 inches or 6 inches. So the next thing to do is to cut extra fabric to complete my length. Like I said, I'm working with length 65 inches, and what I have here is 44 inches. I'm going to cut out extra 22 inches more or 23 inches more to complete the length 65 inches. So I'm going to show us how to cut the fabric. Thing to do, you will take your leftover fabric. I'm going to measure the length 22 inches to complete the length of my dress 65 inches. So like as you can see, this fabric has selvage on this side. It has a scalloping selvage at this end, and it has this scalloping selvage at this end as well. So I'm going to, from this lower part, I'm going to measure 22 inches upward. I'll move to the other side. I'm going to measure 22 inches upward this way, because I want to make use of this scalloping to be at the lower part of the dress. It will really come out beautifully. So I'm going to measure 22 inches upward this way. 22 inches is what will complete my own dress to be 65 inches. Whatever yours is, just work with your measurement. I'm also going to measure 22 inches from this lower part, I'll measure it upward this way. Then I'll take my dress, I'm going to measure the width. What I have here is, I have 30.5 inches. The width of the dress is 30.5 inches. So I'm going to place it this way so that I will get the shape. I'm going to place it at the 22. I'm going to place it this way. I'm going to trace this shape straight to the lower parts with my straight ruler. I'm going to move to the other side. I'm going to trace this shape straight to the lower parts. I measured 30.5 inches. I'm going to confirm the measurement if it's up to 30.5 inches. Yes. So I'm going to remove this. So this is where I'll be cutting it out from. I'm going to cut out this way. This is for the front. This is for the front. I'm going to cut out exactly this same measurement for the back. Make sure that if you are working with cordless like mine, make sure that you arrange this scalloping to be equal. It will come out beautifully. As you can see, the front and the back, the scallop are the same. It will make your dress to be very beautiful at the lower parts. So one is for the front bodies, one is for the front bodies, one is for the back bodies. So the next thing to do, I'm going to take the front bodies, as you can see it's aligned together. I'll take the front bodies, I'll align them together as you can see. Then I'm going to use matching thread. You will not see the thread at all because it's going to be white. So I'm going to use matching thread. I'll take to my sewing machine. I'm going to sew a straight stitch down to make it one piece as you can see. Then by so doing I will achieve my length 65 inches. I've joined it as you can see. It has become one piece. I've also done the same thing on the back bodies as well. This is the back. I've joined it as you can see. I'm going to place the front and the back right side facing each other. Then I'm going to take to my sewing machine. I'm going to join the front and the back together at the shoulders with half an inch seam allowance. I've joined the front and the back bodies together at the shoulder as you can see. This is the right side and this is the front bodies. So the next thing to do, with a bias strip, I'm going to finish the edges of this slit. As you can see, I've sewn the slit area with a bias strip. I've turned the edges to make it neat with a bias strip. I sew it round, I notch it, and I top stitch on it. This is what we have. So the next thing to do is to fold the neckline into two this way, shoulder to shoulder, this is the back, this is the back, and this is the front. So I'm going to measure it. For the back neckline, I have 4.5 inches. Then for the front neckline, I have 5 inches. Then the total neckline is 9.5 inches, but I will make it 10 inches when I'm drafting it. So let's quickly draft the collar. For the ruffles, this is 1 yard of 2 nets. So I'm going to, and it is by 60 in length. 1 yard of 2 nets by 60. I'm going to fold it into 2. Measure 3 inches. Three inches. 3 inches, 3 inches. So I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to place it on it. I'm going to cut about 4 pieces of this. I have 4 long strips. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to join these 2 pieces to make it, I'm going to join these 2 pieces to make it a long strip of 120 inches. I'm going to join these 2 pieces together to make it to be a long strip of 120 inches. I'm going to do this to this other side as well. I'll join these 2 pieces together to make it a long strip of 120 inches. After that, I'm going to gather it up. You can use your needle and thread or your sewing machine. I'm going to gather each piece, then I'm going to sew it to my neckline. I'll quickly do that and show us the next step to take. This is what 120 inches ruffles gives me. This is the second one. I'm going to also gather it up to give me this size. You can triple it if you like. If you want a fuller effect, you can triple it. Then you sew it together and gather it up. So this is what 120 inches length gives me. So I'm going to sew it to my front neckline. So I'm going to gather this up as well. Then the next thing I did, I need a strip, a long strip to tie the neckline, to beautify it around the neckline. So what I did is I folded my bias strip into 2 this way, then I sew it down with a straight stitch, then I cut it out to my desired length. I sew it into 2 places. That's how I was able to achieve this rope. So I'll quickly gather the second one, then I will show us on how to place it on the front bodice neckline and sew it. So I'm going to measure 2 inches away from the neckline, like so. Then I'm going to, this is my first curve where I'm going to place the ruffles. I'm going to mark 2 inches here as well. Then I'm going to place the first ruffles here. Then the second ruffles will be underneath the first one. Going to adjust it nicely. I'm going to spread the gathers evenly. This is the first ruffles. This is how I'm going to place it to the neckline. This is what you should do before joining the front and the back bodies together at the shoulder. That's why I had to lose the joining that I've made before. So I'm going to place the second ruffles underneath the first one like so, as you can see. I'll pin it down, then I'll sew it to the bodies. This is what you should do before joining the front bodies and the back bodies together at the shoulder. I had to lose the joining that I've made before to properly show us the right thing to do. So I'll take to my sewing machine. I'm going to quickly sew this. I'm going to sew the first ruffles to the mark, then underneath the first ruffle I'm going to sew the second ruffle. Then the first ruffle will be laying on the second one like so. Then after that I'll take my strip. I'm going to stitch. After that I'm going to stitch my rope. I'll stitch it to the neckline this way. I'll stitch this other side. I'll stitch it to the neckline this way. Then after that I'm going to take a bias strip. I'll use a bias strip to cover these rough edges. I'll use a bias strip to cover the rough edges. I'll stitch it down. I'll cover the rough edges with a bias strip round the neckline. Then after that I'm going to join the front and the back bodies together at the shoulder. Then I'll move over to the collar. Our neckline is 9.5 inches. I'm going to measure 9.5 inches, but I'll make it 10 inches. I'll trim out the excess later. This is 10 inches. I'll trim out the excess, but I always like to add half an inch to my drafting. It's better to have excess than to have shortage. If you have shortage, you will need to start all over again drafting it, but if you have excess, you will trim it out when sewing it. Then my back neckline is 4.5 inches. This is my back neckline, 4.5 inches. You will place your collar stay on fold because we folded our neckline when we were measuring it. So you will also place your collar stay on fold. I'm going to measure 2.5 inches upward. I'm going to measure 2.5 inches upward. I'll rule a straight line. Then the next thing to do, I'm going to come over to this place. I'm going to measure 1/2 inch upward. Then with my French curve, I will curve this 1/2 inch to meet this back neckline. I want my collar height to be 1.5 inches. So I'm going to measure 1.5 inches upward. 1.5. At this midpoint, I'm going to measure 1.5. From this curved line, I'm going to measure 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. Then I'll connect the lines. Then at this edge, I'll measure 1/2 inch inward, 1/2 inch. From this 1/2 inch, I'll just give it a nice curve to meet this 10 inches mark. That's all. So the next thing to do, I'm going to cut it out. So the part that will be sewn to the neckline, I'm going to notch it. So that you will not make mistake when sewing it. So the next thing to do, this is like a template. I'm going to cut lining. So the next thing to do, I'm going to cut lining. I'm going to add 1/2 inch round the lining. Then I'm also going to use the lining to cut out on the lace as well. I'll quickly do that. This is the lining. I've pinned the collar to the lining. So I'm going to add 1/2 inch round the collar. So I'm going to add 1/2 inch round it. 1/2 inch. So it's time for us to sew the collar. I have 2 pieces of the lining and 2 pieces of the fabric. One of the lining, I iron collar stay on it, as you can see. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to sew. This is the right side of the lining, and I'm going to place the wrong side of the collar to the right side of the lining to make it to be one piece of fabric. So what I will do, I will take to my sewing machine. I'm going to stitch it down. I'm going to stitch the lining with the fabric together. I'm going to stitch it down to make it to be one piece of fabric. I'm going to do the same thing on this other side as well. I'm going to, this is the right side of the lining, this is the wrong side of the fabric. I'm going to place the wrong side of the fabric to the right side of the lining, like so. Then I'll take to my sewing machine. I'm going to stitch it down round the edges with 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to do the same thing on this other side. I'm going to stitch it down round the edges with 1/4 of an inch. I've sewn it, as you can see. This has become one piece. This has also become one piece. So we have 2 pieces. So the next thing to do, I'm going to place the right side together like so. Then I'll take to my sewing machine. I'm going to sew 1/2 an inch round the collar. I'm going to sew 1/2 an inch at this upper part round the collar. This is the part that we notch, that will be sewn to the neckline. This lower part that we notch will be sewn to the neckline. So I'm going to take to my sewing machine. I'm going to sew 1/2 an inch round the collar. The seam allowance that we added to the collar, I'm going to sew the 1/2 an inch like so round the collar. After that, I'm going to notch it. I will notch it, then I will turn it to the right side and I will top stitch on it. Let me quickly do that and show us the next step to take. I've sewn it close to the collar, so I'm going to trim. Keep quiet. So I'm going to notch it round. After that, I'll trim off the excess fabric. I'm going to notch it round. So I'm going to trim off the excess fabric. After that, I'll turn it to the right side. Next, I'm going to take to my sewing machine. I'm going to top stitch round the collar. Next, I'm going to take to my sewing machine. I'm going to top stitch on it round. After that, I will sew the collar to the neckline of my dress. After that, the midpoint of the back that I notched when we were drafting, you find the midpoint of your back neckline. This is my midpoint. I notch it when we were drafting it. Then this notch part, the midpoint at the back, I'm going to place this notch part of the collar. I'm going to place it to the notch part of the fabric, right side facing each other. I'm going to pin it down. I'm going to pin the collar round to the neckline. My collar fits into the neckline perfectly. So my sewing machine, I'm going to sew 1/2 inch round the collar. After that, I'm going to notch it. After notching it, then I will use this other piece to cover the seam allowance. The part that I sew to the collar, I notch it round, then I trim out the excess fabric. This is how it looks at the back. It's looking very neat and nice. So the next thing to do to achieve a very neat finishing, we need to close up these rough stitches. We need to close it up. So you will take your bias strip to cover the stitch line to make it very neat on the inside. So what I will do, I'll open it up, I'll place it on this part, then I'm going to sew it round. I will notch it. Then after that, I will now use the bias strip. I will cover the seam line. Then I will come over to the right side of my collar. I'm going to top stitch on this line round the collar. By so doing, it's going to hold this bias down to the neckline. I'll quickly do that, then I'll show us on how I'm going to cut my sleeve. After that, I'll sew the size of my dress, then I'll show us the final look. I folded my fabric into two. This is my starting line. I'm going to measure my cap height. I normally use 5 inches for my cap height, but I'm going to use 5.5. I don't want it to be tight around my armpit because This is a non-stretchy fabric. My round sleeve measurement is 10 inches. I'm going to add extra 2 inches to it. I prefer to have excess fabric than shortage. Then my round elbow is sleeve. I have a detailed video for sleeve drafting. In case you don't know how to draft your sleeve, I'm going to put the link in the description box. Then I'm going to put the link of my detailed sleeve tutorial in the description box below in case you don't know how to draft your sleeve. So from the seam allowance, I'm going to draw my bell sleeve. This is a bell sleeve. This is how I want the sleeve to be. It's a bell sleeve. You can draw out any sleeve of your choice depending on your preference. You can make it straight like so. If you don't want it to be flared, you can make it straight like this, but I want mine to be like a bell sleeve. So I'm going to be cutting it out following this shape, a bell sleeve cutting. This is what I have. So I'm going to cut another one that is going to overlap on it. I want the sleeve to be double. So I'm going to cut another one that is going to overlap on it. Starting from here. The measurement is 5 inches by 11 inches. And work with your measurements. So before I sew it to my dress, I'm going to sew it on top. I'm going to slightly pleat it. I'm going to sew it like this. I will slightly pleat it. I will slightly pleat it a little. Then it's going to fall on it like so. It's going to be double. So I'm going to slightly. This is the right side. right side facing each other. So I'll take to my sewing machine. As you can see, it is longer than the sleeve, so I'm going to slightly pleat the excess. I'll slightly pleat it. I'll slightly pleat it like so. I'll do the same thing. 3 pleats is okay. Then I'll take to my sewing machine. I'll first of all sew it down. After I sew it down, it's gonna look like this. Then before I will now attach my sleeve to the dress. After that, I'll show us the final look. I am so sorry that this video took so long to finish. I am very sorry. It's just that I'm used to showing tutorials step by step on how to properly sew any dress that I'm showing us. So I'm going to get a silver trimmings. I'm going to use it to beautify the neckline. It is absolutely optional. You can rock it this way, the way it is on my body. But I'm going to get a silver trimmings. I'm going to iron it on top of the bias just to beautify the neckline. Yes, just to beautify the neckline. It is absolutely optional. This is the final outcome of today's tutorial, guys. As you can see, it is very easy to make. This is the back view. Today is Sunday morning. I'm going to church. Do you like my turban cap? If you want me to make tutorial on how I made this turban cap, drop in the comment section. Say yes in the comment section. Please make the turban cap and I will do it for you guys. If you find my tutorial helpful, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel down below if you've not done so. I upload weekly tutorial on my channel. Also remember to click on the notification bell so that whenever I upload a new video, you will be notified. Until I come your way next, please stay safe and remain blessed. Bye.